Hello everyone, this is your friend and I am back with a new fanfic part 3. The fanfic title is What If Hinata's Biggest Mistake Became Her Greatest Blessing part 3. I hope you enjoy this fanfic, and if you enjoy this, so don't forget to subscribe my channel. Now let's start the fanfic. Releasing her hair from the confines of its scrunchie, Hinata began raking through her hair in an effort to reform the bun that once sat neatly on her head. She figured it was not very professional to be walking around with what looked like a bird's nest coming out of her skull. However, before she could perfect her fuzzy masterpiece, a customer in the corner of her eye caught her attention. "I'll be over in just a second, sir," she says, speed walking over to him. Once there, she forced her lips to spread into the most keen and immense smile she could muster, something that said she loved her job and wasn't upset that her boss refused to give her the full day off from work and took his order. Out of the blue, a few days prior to today, Hinata had received a phone call from her father. What he had requested of her shocked the brunette. He wanted her to join him and the rest of her extended family for a day at the Hyuga compound. Ever since she moved out and began living on her own, her father never really pressed her to visit. As long as she called every once in a while and kept her grades up, he left her alone. So Hinata supposed this must have been something of urgency. She got in contact with her boss ASAP. Hinata could still remember the hint of annoyance in her voice when she realized it was her on the other end of the line. "What do you want, Hinata? I'm kinda busy." Her harsh attitude threw her for a loop and she struggled to get her words out. "Hello Asami, I mean Ms. Yokoza. I'm calling to ask your permission to take the day off tomorrow," she forced out, her hands shaking as she held the phone. "Why?" "Well, you see, my father has asked me to accompany him and the rest of my family for a get-together. He and I have a very complicated relationship, so it's very important for me to." Hinata stopped speaking as soon as she heard a very sarcastic laugh echo through the phone. "You're expecting me to let you have the full day off so you can go goof off with your family?" "Well, not exactly. My father tells me he has something to discuss with me. I believe it's very important." "Look, Hinata," the manager started cutting her off yet again, "this is not my first run-in with employees with daddy issues. Heck, I don't even speak to my family, and yeah, it's sad and all, but I'm still here at Sweet Freaking Delights Cafe from dawn to dusk, making lattes until my fingers are numb, and do you know why?" She took Hinata's silence as an answer. "Because that's what puts food on the table, so unless you have some other source of income, you're coming in tomorrow. The best I can give you is half the day. K." Hinata's voice caught in her throat. She couldn't believe this, which all Naruto had to do was wink at her a few times and he could practically take the entire year off, but when she needed the day to deal with family issues, she wouldn't budge. If there was a way to strangle this woman from the phone, Hinata was sure she might have. But Hinata was met with the sound of the dial tone. She reluctantly showed up for work the next day. "I'll be right back with your order." Hinata gave the customer a quick polite bow and made her way back to the counter. Her eyes couldn't help but occasionally wander towards the big clock on the wall. She had exactly 10 minutes left before she had to leave, and she was nervous as hell. So nervous she didn't notice the hand stretched out before her waiting for the order slip. Only until she heard a low ahem was she aware of their presence. Hinata turned around and had to look up to meet the eyes of the perpetrator. Naruto stared back at her with this tiresome expression that made her raise an eyebrow. "I kinda you. No need that." It took Hinata a second to compose herself before she quickly responded. "Oh why yeah, here you go," she said, handing him the slip. He looked at her for a second, but as soon as they made eye contact again, he turned around with great speed. Hinata had noticed he had been acting very odd lately. He was forgetful and clumsier than usual, and at times he'd stare at her. It was like he was in his own little world, a zombie really, and it was starting to frighten her. She hoped he was okay. What was also weird was this all just happened to occur right after the whole Hokage monument fiasco. Hinata wondered if it could be that he was still mad at her. They never did get a chance to discuss the issue. She decided to be brave and ask him. After giving the customer his order, Hinata quietly slipped behind the counter and tapped Naruto on the shoulder in which he quickly jerked away surprised. Hey what's up? His almost nervous demeanor only heightened Hinata's curiosity. Aw nothing it's just. Are you feeling alright? You've been sort of out of it for these past few days. Naruto's mouth opened in awe for a moment before turning into a awkward smile. What do you mean? He let out a restricted laugh. I'm perfectly fine. Hinata's eyes narrowed in disbelief. He was definitely hiding something. He said nothing else and began to walk away to continue working. She followed him. Are you sure? She said, resting her elbows on the counter, watching him brew another cup of coffee. You can tell me you know. Naruto didn't look at her, he just continued working, pretending not to hear her, which caused Hinata to worry even more. She was starting to think her theory was actually reality. She slid her body closer to him, hoping to catch his attention, but moved a little too close, her shoulder accidentally brushing against his. Naruto reacted as if her touch had burnt him and practically hopped away from her. This causing Hinata's eyes to grow as big as the serving plates. His actions were so brash and out of ordinary. She called out to him again, Naruto-kun, talk to me. I'm starting to worry, she said in a melancholy tone. Naruto stopped moving and slowly turned to look down at her. Hinata noticed how red his face was and how his breathing had hitched when he forced himself to look at her in the eyes. I said I'm okay. I promise, so don't worry. He then, as if to prove his point, lifted strained hands to her head and ruffled her hair. Hinata's hands hovered over her bun in defense against his hand's attack and broke out into a fit of giggles. As soon as the bubbly sound reached Naruto's ears, he came back to reality. His hands stopped moving and quickly returned to his sides. This puzzled her yet again. It was almost as if he was trying at all costs to avoid touching her. She was forced to come to the conclusion that he was in fact upset at her. A deep sinking filled her gut. She couldn't bear to leave things the way they were. Hinata reached out to him, his back currently turned to help a customer. You're mad at me, aren't you? She whispered, lightly gripping the end of his shirt and pressing her forehead into his back. She could feel his muscles tense through his shirt in response to her touch. Her actions causes something to snap in Naruto. I already told you I'm alright. He unintentionally yells, turning to her. Unfortunately, he moves with so much force that the coffee pot in his hand slips from his fingers and hits the ground with a loud crash. Hinata can only stare at him with bewilderment and a hint of sadness. His gaze, however, glued to the ground. Shit. He curses as he kneels down and began picking up the GL pieces with his fingers. A sudden guilt washed over Hinata and she soon joined him on the ground picking up the pieces, but he stops her. Don't bother. This is my fault, I got it. Hinata frowned and reached into the drawer under the counter. Here, at least use this, you'll cut yourself. She offers him a dustpan and a mini broom. He shakily takes it from her hands. Thanks. Even though Hinata could tell that her questioning was agitating him, the wonder was killing her. They had just begun speaking again. She didn't want them to be on bad terms because of her actions. Plus, they made a promise as friends to let each other know how they felt. Naruto-kun, I just wanted to say that I'm sorry. Naruto looks up from the ground at her, his eyebrow furrowed. About what? The situation on Hokage Monument. That's why you're mad, right? Naruto is shocked but soon lets out an airy chuckle, standing up with the dustpan. There's no reason to be sorry about that. He gives her a small smile. And I already told you I wasn't mad, why don't you believe me? He then pays her to go into the back room. Because you're acting weird, you won't look at me in the eye, and every time I touch you you freak out, Hinata says, following him. Her words causes him to freeze in his tracks. Hinata supposes she's hit a nerve. Naruto, however, recomposes himself. There's nothing wrong with me, I'm acting normal, I don't know what you're talking about. He then emptied the contents of the dustpan into the garbage and tried to leave. But Hinata slides in front of him, blocking him. Yes you do. See, you can't even look at me now. Naruto looks at the ceiling rather than her face. I'm not mad at you and I'm not mad about the monument situation, I guess I'm just feeling a little sick, that's all, so stop worrying, okay? He tries once again to leave, but Hinata didn't budge, a frown now dawning her face. If that's true, then look at me. Rather than compiling, Naruto's eyes shifted in another direction. Hinata didn't give up though. Every time his eyes moved a different direction to avoid her, she moved to follow them. Soon she grew annoyed and decided to try a new approach. She grabbed Naruto by his face and pulled it close to hers. Naruto-kun, look at me, she demanded. What she sees, however, surprises her. His face was a crimson red and he was looking at her now, but there was something different about his gaze. It was filled with pain, almost identical to the gaze he held that night on the monument. A warm feeling bubbled in her stomach and she could feel her own face begin to heat up. Their close proximity didn't help either. She released him from her grasp, regretting her actions, and looked down at the ground in embarrassment. Why are you making that face? She asks, looking at him again. Naruto remains silent and Hinata realizes the feeling must be mutual. Hinata unknowingly takes a step towards him and he backs away, catching her attention. Don't get too close, he mutters, looking away from her. Hinata knits her eyebrows in confusion as she steps closer and Naruto takes another giant step back. Slowly a teasing smile grows on Hinata's lips. She concludes that she is right again and that he is embered, but in actuality what Naruto was feeling was something he himself couldn't explain. Why? She says, stepping closer, enjoying how the roles were reversed. Hinata, I'm serious. Naruto warns, backing further away, afraid of what his body was telling him to do. Could it be that great and fearless Naruto Uzumaki is uneasy because of an itty-bitty girl like myself? No, that's not possible, right? Hinata teased, cornering him. Hinata, please don't. Don't what? Hinata said, using her index finger to trace along his jawline as he did in the past to her in a teasing manner. Am I embering? Why? Hinata has no time to react when she felt her body being lifted from its spot, spun around, and her back slammed against the wall behind her. When she opened her eyes, she found herself pinned by Naruto and all humor washed away from her face. I told you to stop, didn't I? His eyes were heavy, filled with that enamored look again, like a lion who had just captured his prey. No words left Hinata's mouth. She could only swallow in fear and look back at him. Naruto-kun, what are you? Her voice scrambled as his face drew closer. She struggled, pushing hard against his chest, but his strength is too great, her actions only causing him to draw closer. A loud squeak erupts from her body when she feels his breath tickle her neck and her body gives in, her eyes squeezing shut in anticipation. I don't know what's going on with me, Hinata, he whispers into her ear, her face reddening with each word. He somehow gets even closer, his now lips faintly touching her ear. But if you keep doing things like this, I don't think I'll be able to control myself. Hinata's eyes flew open at hearing that, and before she could respond, the door opens. There you two are, the managers looking for you. Sakura stopped speaking, noticing the weird atmosphere between the two. Hinata was now looking at the floor, her hands held almost defensively against her chest, while Naruto stood far away from her, his hands in his pocket, and stared at the ceiling. They both were a burning crimson color. What's going on here? Hinata's head shot up from the ground, wearing an uncomfortable expression. I don't know, Naruto-kun is being strange, she says, almost yelling the last part. She then abruptly left the room, Sakura's eyes following her the whole way. She then turned back to Naruto, puzzled. What did you do? There's a bit of silence, he himself processing what just occurred. He then brushed his hair back with his hand. I don't know. Sakura doesn't question any further, she just looks at him, struggle to put the pieces together in his mind, and then leans back to look at Hinata through the doorway, who is obviously distressed. Come on, you. We have customers to worry about, we'll talk about this another time, she says, grabbing him by the shirt and dragging him out the room. Once out there, the tense atmosphere continues, Naruto and Hinata now working on opposite ends of the shop. Sakura pushes back her curiosity and decides to break the ice and start up a conversation. So the holidays are coming up, you guys, isn't it exciting? She says, looking between the two. Sakura was answered by silence and sighed. Me and the others were talking and I thought it would be a cool idea if we all could get together. I don't know, after work and maybe discuss something we can all do together. What do you guys think? Sure, it's fine with me, Naruto said, his attention on the donuts he was packing in boxes rather than on her. Sakura smiled hearing his response and quickly turned around to Hinata. What about you, Hinata? Oh no, I'm sorry, I can't. I have to get going now, Hinata said, taking off her apron and grabbing her purse. Sakura arched an eyebrow. Huh? Where to? My father's. He invited me over for the day. Hinata took her hair out and brushed it with her fingers. Rain check. Sakura nodded. We still have plenty of time, plus it's been a while since we've all been together. I kinda want everyone there. Sakura looked over at Naruto. She could see there was a tint of worry hidden in his eyes and she felt inclined to say something. Are you sure you're going to be okay? We all know your relationship with your dad is rather difficult. She quickly glanced at Naruto and then back to her. Maybe Naruto should come along. Hinata immediately tensed and smiled plastically at Sakura. Thanks, but I'll be fine. This is something I have to do on my own. I have to be brave. Or maybe you have plans with other people, Naruto mumbled under his breath, but Hinata heard him however. She breathed out hardly, walked around Sakura and stood in front of him. I knew it, you're mad. What is it that is bothering you, Naruto-kun? I'm not, it's just, you're the one who's acting weird. Naruto paused in thought and scratched the back of his neck. Ever since a certain someone entered your life, it's like he's your new number one. You never have time for me anymore. Both Sakura and Hinata were shocked, staring at him with wide eyes, and apparently Naruto noticed because he quickly corrected himself. And not just me, of course, I mean everyone in general. You never have time for us, he blushed. The shock, however, didn't leave their faces. Ah, just forget it, I'm acting like a little kid again. Hinata's eyes softened and she had to hold herself back from showing him affection, afraid of what he might do again. Oh Naruto-kun, it's okay really, I think I understand. If it makes you feel better, I'm not taking anyone else with me. She yums, he's talking about Tonari. I just want to be a bit more independent. I rely too much on you guys, so don't worry, and hey, if you want to hang out we can this weekend, I'm free. A slightly restrained smile appeared on his face. It wasn't only Tonari that was causing this irritation in him. The other half of the feeling came from something deep within, something that was hard to explain, so he thought it would be easier if he let her believe that was the only reason. Well, I better get going. I will see you both soon, Hinata said, lifting her bag over her shoulder. Both Naruto and Sakura said their goodbyes and Hinata turned to walk out the door. Sakura's attention was drawn to Naruto, who was watching Hinata intensely as she walked down the street through the window. Is there something wrong? Why are you watching her like that? Naruto catches himself and looks back at Sakura and laughs. Oh, you saw that, huh? I'm not too sure myself. Sakura stares at him for a while, when a memory crosses her mind. Hey, did you ever get to do what I told you to do? You know, to think about things. Oh, about that. Naruto drifts off in thought. I think I need more time. I'm not 100% sure, and I need to be. This time there's no room for mistakes, he says with a sense of determination. Is that why you're acting so weird? Sakura said, getting back to work. Naruto's face dropped and his gaze shifted. No, that's not it. I have just been thinking about Hinata. She's acting pretty weird herself, don't you think? Sakura looks at Naruto in confusion. Really, how so? It's just she's more open than she's ever been. She's going out on Gukins, I hear, and I don't know about now, but she was hanging out with that Tonari guy on a regular basis. It's weird. Well, isn't that what friends are supposed to do? Sakura questioned. Yeah, I guess, but I mean, even though we're talking again, I feel like something's different and I don't like it. It's like she's changed or something. I feel kinda left out, really. Naruto stops speaking and smiles sheepishly. Sorry, here I go rambling on like a idiot again, he says, laughing in emberment. But Sakura has no problem whatsoever. In fact, Naruto doesn't see, but there's a sparkle in Sakura's eyes from excitement. Could it be? She whispers. Okay, Sakura, hear me out on this one. Could it be that Hinata? Sakura mentally cheers in her head as she awaits for his answer, nodding, signaling him to go on. That Hinata likes Tonari. Sakura doesn't say anything, her jaw practically touching the ground. Huh. Hinata enters her bus and takes a seat. Her thoughts, however, are in the clouds. She hadn't completely recovered from the events that occurred in the cafe. What was it that caused him to act so odd? Yes, she had been able to figure out that he was still a bit upset about her actions towards Tonari on the monument, that in itself also confusing to her. But she couldn't help but feel like there was something more behind that enamored look he had given her. He claims he couldn't control himself, but what was it he was trying to control? Why did her little actions of affection now suddenly stir his nerves? After all, he himself had been even more affectionate to her in the past, hugging her constantly, unexpectedly grasping her hand and on occasion playing with her hair. In fact, to the unknowledgeable eye, he would appear to be her boyfriend rather than her best friend. So why all of a sudden did he act so brash when she mimicked his actions? After all, it wasn't as if there were any feelings in them, right? Hinata's chest fluttered at the possibilities. She then shook any wishful thoughts out of her head. She promised herself she would not misinterpret his actions ever again. Friends was all that they were. But despite that, her face heated when she recalled being pinned by Naruto, that look in his eyes that caused her to tingle all over, how his body seemed to mold perfectly against hers, and the feeling of his breath against her skin. Hinata cursed herself for eagerly wondering what would have happened if Sakura hadn't came into the room. A buzzing in her pocket releases her from her thoughts. She reached in and pulled out her phone. It's a text message from Tenten. Tenten. Hey, are you still coming over to your folks' house? Hinata is surprised. Did that mean that she too was coming over? Her and Neji's relationship had been on the rocks last time she heard, so this was completely unexpected. Hinata wondered if they had made up. Hinata. Yes, are you coming also? Tenten. Yeah, shocking, huh? Neji just came out of the blue and asked me, and for some reason I just couldn't reject him. I guess I must have felt sorry for him, lol. Hinata smiled looking at the message. As much as Tenten tried to act tough and all, Hinata knew that deep down that Tenten loved her cousin more than anyone else in the world. The only reason she even was fighting with her cousin is because he himself had not expressed his love for her openly as she surprisingly did. But Hinata also knew just how crazy he was about her as well. He was just stubborn and not exactly skilled when it came to expressing his feelings. They both had that in common, and that's why they were at odds all the time. But she was sure that after this trip they'd be all over each other again. All they had to do was talk it out. Or fight it out in Tenten's case. Tenten. And I heard you were coming, so I just had to come. Hinata. Yeah, I'm glad you're going to be there. This trip just got a little bit better. Tenten. XD, yup, see you there, champ. Hinata. Lol, okay. Hinata then put her phone away and gazed out the window. That nervousness from earlier came creeping back into her consciousness. Ino Yamenka bursted through the door cafe doors in distraught. What is it, Sakura who died? Is everything okay? She says, leaning on a table out of breath. Sakura is surprised by how quickly she arrives. After all, she only texted her 5 minutes ago. Ino, relax, it's not that serious. Sakura noticed someone else running into the shop catching up with Ino. Ino, what the hell is Sai doing here? I texted you. Ino asked me to help her with an art project, and when she got a text she just abruptly left, so I decided to tag along, Sai answers, smiling his usually plain smile. Ino briefly glared at him and then turned back to Sakura. So what is that you had to tell me? You said it was an emergency. Sakura walked over to Naruto, who was helping a customer, and grabbed him by his arm. Hey, what are you? Sakura dragged him back towards Ino. Tell Ino exactly what you told me earlier. What and no. Why? Naruto says, confused. Sakura frowns. Please Naruto, just do it. Naruto hesitates. Fine, but I don't get why. All I said was that I think Hinata has a crush on Tonari, that's all. Ino's eyes widen and she sucked in her cheeks. Sakura, on the other hand, bursted out in laughter. Isn't that most ridiculous thing you have ever heard, Ino? She says, trying to catch her breath. I mean Tonari and Hinata, that's crazy. Ino remains silent and looks at the ground, causing Sakura to worry. Ino, that's silly, right? Don't tell me you believe that. Ino looks back at Sakura with a peculiar expression. Well, it's not impossible. Sakura's mouth opens in shock. No way, that is impossible. Well, think about it, Sakura. She still hangs out with him despite all of our warnings, and no matter how weird we all find him, she defends him. Plus, they do go to a whole separate school than we do, so who knows what goes on there. Also, Ino drapes Sakura's arm around her and pulls her closer. Since Naruto hasn't openly expressed any feelings for her, she has been trying to move on. The whole thing just sounds a little fishy to me, she whispers. Sakura pushes Ino off. I can't believe you right now, Ino. There's no way she likes that creep. Sai moves closer to them, hearing their conversation. This can very well be true. The possibilities are even more likely, especially if she displays a pattern in behavior. Think about it, Tonari was first a friend and now a love interest, just like Naruto. The two girls shoved their hands over his mouth to prevent him from speaking. Luckily, Naruto was too busy with customers to notice, but once he is free, he jogs over to hear their thoughts. So what do you guys think? Am I going nuts here? Everyone remains quiet. Sakura decides to test his reaction. Oh well, there is a possibility. Sakura sees Naruto's mood instantly sour and secretly smiles. How does that make you feel, Naruto? Sai says, taking out a pen and pencil. Naruto doesn't respond and begins wiping down the counter, but Sakura doesn't let him off that easy. Naruto, she calls to him in a sing-song voice. The man asked you question, we're all curious, entertain us, won't you? I hate that guy, he says, clenching his jaw. Ino isn't satisfied either and slides down so that she's right where he is wiping. Go on. What else? Naruto scoffs and goes to help another customer. Ino is also pleased by his reaction and she looks back at Sakura, who is also wearing a similar grin. Here you go, ma'am, Naruto says, reaching out to give the customer her drink, trying to block out their dumb smiles. But Ino decides to take it a step further. Does the idea of Hinata liking another man bother you? He loses it, and then the next thing he knows, he's put so much pressure on the foam cup he's hold, his fingers go right through it, sending hot coffee everywhere and burning his hand. Arg, damn it, he yells, dropping the cup and attending to his now stinging hand. The customer thankfully jumped back, preventing coffee from landing on her. Sakura hops out from behind the counter and apologizes her whole way to the scene with napkins in her hand. It's on the house, I'm so sorry, she says to the customer while cleaning the sticky mess that's on the floor. Naruto rushes to make a new drink, now struggling, only able to use his left hand. That was the third time today he had done something erratic because of Hinata. Why was he so unnerved by her these days? What was wrong with him? Was he sick? After giving the customer her drink, he stares at his hand, shocked by his actions. It's red and begins to blister from being burnt. Sakura stares at it as well, feeling a bit guilty, but is happy at the same time because now she knows why exactly he was acting weird. Naruto then joins Sakura to help but doesn't face her. You're all right. It does bother me, he whispers. Sai, Ino and Sakura all look to him. But I don't get it. Is it wrong for me to feel this way? To feel sick hearing that there's even a possibility that Hinata likes that guy, and to have the urge to hunt him down and break every bone in his body. Naruto looks up at them. You guys. Tell me, why does my chest hurt after hearing that? Sakura, Ino and Sai didn't say a word, they just looked at each other. Finally, after a long thoughtful ride, Hinata arrived at the Hyuga compound. She nervously exits the bus where two guards wait by the gates. She walks over to them and they greet her with a polite bow and a, "Welcome home, Lady Hinata." "Thank you," she responded. They then opened the large gates leading to the compound. A feeling of nostalgia washed over her as she continued down the path leading to the house. It looked like winter wonderland, trees covered with snow and icicles from past snow showers, with white GR to complement them and to add to the effect. The fountains leading up to main house were frozen, making it appear almost as if they were ice sculptures. Along with the soft blue lighting, Hinata felt like she was on a movie set. The house attendants really had outdone themselves this time. Once she reached the front door, Hinata knocked 3 times before it suddenly opened, revealing another set of guards. They extended their arms, kindly welcoming her into the house. She enters and looks down the grand hall and sees her father and her sister waiting for her with very professional stances. She smiles at them sheepishly and waves as the guards take her bags. This was it, the big reunion. Hinata sucks in a breath and walked towards them. When she had reached them, she bowed. I have returned. Her sister mimics her actions and bows while her father simply nods his head. Welcome back, they say simultaneously. Then there is silence. Hinata looks at the two of them, but her gaze mainly focuses on little sister Hanabi. She looks back at her with equal intensity. Not being able to contain it any longer, a smile begins to creep on Hanabi's face and an even bigger one on Hinata's. Hanabi loses control completely and sprints over to Hinata while she kneels slightly to catch her sister in her arms. You have no idea how much I've missed you, Onisan, Hanabi says, clinging onto her sister tightly. Why the heck haven't you come and visit? Otusan has been driving me crazy. Quote. Hinata lets out a laugh. I'm sorry, really, I have been meaning to. I've just been so busy, she says, putting her sister down. Hanabi frowns. That's not a good enough answer. She then crosses her arms and turns away from Hinata. But she knows just what to do to get a smile back on her face. Hinata reaches into her coat pocket and pulls out a small box. I got you something I know you'll like. Hanabi turns her head towards her slightly. There better be jewelry in there. Hinata simply nodded her head and Hanabi was next to her in an instant. I got it while I was overseas, Hinata mentions, but Hanabi barely pays attention, already shredding open the box. A gold necklace, ooh, and the stones on it are my favorite color. Okay, all is forgiven, Hanabi shrieks, holding the necklace against her neck and forgetting about everything else around her. Teenagers, Hinata mumbles and turns to her father. He had been standing in the distance watching them with no emotion on his face. This had always posed an issue for Hinata in the past because not being able to read his emotions made him even harder to approach. She shakily reached into her other coat pocket and pulled out another small box and slowly approaches him. I'm sorry for not visiting sooner, Otusan, please accept this gift as my apology. Hinata bows her head and holds out the gift. Raise your head, child, Hiyashi says in an oddly calm manner. Hinata does not believe his words and peeks up at him to make sure. He then nods his head roaringly and she rises. Guards, you may leave us for the time being. I wish to have privacy with my daughters. And with that the guards humbly leave. Hiyashi peeps around the corner to make sure, then returns back to Hinata. He slowly removes the gift from her hand and looks at it curiously. I'm not sure if this currently stands, but I faintly recall Okasan mentioning you have a sweet tooth. So I got you chocolates. I hope that's alright, Hinata says. He doesn't respond but appears to have accepted it, slipping into his pocket. He then clears his throat. It's good to see you're doing well, Hinata. Your presence has been missed. Hinata's eyes widened. Was this really even her father standing right before her? What happened to the one who would scold her for not visiting and tell her how she continues to bring shame to the Hyuga name? The one who provided for her on a financial level rather than an emotional level, though this appeared as simple gesture to most people, for her father to express that he missed her, that meant the world to Hinata. Hiyashi shocked his daughter even further when he extended his arms to her, motioning her over with his hands. Hinata looks over at Hanabi. She responds by nodding her head. It's okay, Onisan, Otusan has changed since you were gone, she says, encouraging her. That would explain all the phone calls and gifts he's had been giving her. Hinata wonder what it was that caused it. Still, Hinata bravely moves towards her father and engages in what had to be the most awkward hug she had ever received in her life. But despite that, it had to be one of happiest ones she had ever gotten also, tears slowly building up in her eyes. I'm glad to be back, Hinata says into his shoulder. Hanabi let them have their sappy moment for a bit before she grew impatient. Okay, that's enough, she says, pulling her sister away from her father. Otusan, I want to help Nisan settle down and catch her up on things, is that okay? Hiyashi paused in thought for a moment but nodded his head. Very well, but as for you, Hinata. Hinata's attention was placed back on him again. Yes, Otusan. I wish to speak to you later, it is very important, so do not forget. Hinata nodded her head, and the next thing she knew, she was being dragged in the opposite way by her sister. She glanced back at her father and caught him looking back at her with a thoughtful expression as if he had a lot on his mind. He then turned around and walked away. Hinata hadn't had the slightest idea what this talk was about, but she could tell by the little expression her father did give it was something serious. So while you were gone, I finally convinced Otusan to renovate, so there are some cool new additions to the house, and I got to help, Hanabi said, puffing her chest out, pleased with herself. The Hyuga compound was like a huge mansion, with 30+ rooms and architectural detail that put some museums to shame. It had to be big because, as well as Hinata's immediate family, her extended family also lived there as well. Though on the inside it could be hectic at some points, it was a beautiful place to live. So Hinata couldn't see how renovation was necessary. We have a new kitchen, some new bathrooms, and I did some adjustments to our rooms. As Hinata walked with Hanabi, she noticed big difference, one that Hanabi hadn't mentioned. Hey Hanabi, where are the elders? I don't see their rooms anymore. A wide smile grew on Hanabi's face. I knew you'd notice soon enough. I thought it would be a perfect idea to divide the house up into sections. One section of the house is now for the elders, which is the left side. The right side belongs to the rest of our family members, and the main house which we're in right now belongs to us now. Hinata had to admit her sister really had a talent when it came to management. She would make a great leader someday. I'm impressed, you did a wonderful job. Hanabi's smile grew bashful. Well, you know I try. Someone has to take care of things while Otusan is busy, plus this is so much better for business. Hanabi took Hinata by the hand and pulled her once again. Come, you have to see my room. She led her to a door that had been decorated with amber stones and had a shiny finish. Hanabi excitedly opened the door, and Hinata finds herself shocked once again at what's on the inside. She could tell that Hanabi had done quite the bit of growing up since her leave. Everything was quite tidy and shared that same amber color and woodsy theme. She had also swapped out her posters and cutesy wall decorations for pictures of her family and famous landmarks. The old stuffed animals that once laid on her dresser had been replaced with a large amount of makeup and perfume, except for a bear wearing an amber necklace that laid on her bed, a gift from their late mother. In fact, from peering from a distance, Hinata could see that anything that looked or appeared childish was shoved into her closet, a stuffed animal's arm peeking out unknown to Hanabi. Hinata wished Hanabi wouldn't rush to become an adult so quickly and enjoyed what little that was left of childhood her, because adulthood was a lot harder than she thought. So, what do you think? Don't you just love it? Pretty fancy, huh? Hinata nodded. It's definitely a huge change. She glanced at the makeup on the dresser. Don't you think that's too much makeup though? You can never have too much makeup, Onisan, Hanabi said, crossing her arms. You should let me do yours sometime. You're pretty, Onisan, but a little makeup wouldn't hurt, especially when it comes to attracting the opposite, she said with a wink. Hinata rolled her eyes. I think I'll pee, she says, leaving the room. Pee. Come on, Hanabi says, following her. No. Pretty please, Hanabi begs. No, Hanabi, she says sternly. Hinata then comes to an abrupt stop and looks around. Is my room at least still in the same area? She questions, confused by the different scenery. Yep, straight down the hall, Hanabi says, pointing, and there's a bit of a surprise in there too. Hinata wastes no time and speed walks towards her room and opens it, with Hanabi rushing to keep up with her. The room had been slightly redecorated with new bed sheets and curtains and wall decorations, but still keep elements that she loved, like the lavender and pastel decor, and plenty of storage and seating areas. And most importantly, her mother's picture that hung above her bed with a new frame that matched the theme. Hinata's and Hanabi's mother died when they were younger from health issues, and it was important to the both of them to keep a little bit of her around in memory, so it meant a lot to Hinata that they at least kept it the same. Do you like it? Hanabi said, looking around with Hinata. I absolutely love it. Did you do this? Yup, Hanabi said, smiling brightly. Think of it as a welcome back gift. Hinata pulled her into a hug. thank you. Her eyes drift towards a sliding door in the corner of the room she had never seen before. She slowly wanders towards it in curiosity. She soon finds out that it leads outside to a small garden with plenty of flowers in different varieties. They hadn't opened up yet because of the weather, and there was also a chair swing that hung between two trees in the far corner. Hinata turns to Hanabi with her mouth open. You always did have a thing for plant life, and I thought the swing was a nice touch, don't you think? Hanabi was once again in her sister's arms. Did I mention how amazing you are? Hinata says, squeezing her sister. I know, Hanabi says pleasantly. I also remembered. Hanabi started taking a seat on the swing. How much Naruto-Nisan likes these things as well. You should show him this next time he stops by. Hinata is obviously affected by her sister's comment but tries to remain calm, but memories from earlier crept back into her mind and she tries desperately to hide her blush. Hanabi finds Hinata's silence strange. So how are things going between you two? Did you finally become a couple like you always dreamed? No way. Who even said I had an interest in him? Hinata said nervously, trying to appear as honest as possible. Hanabi's eyes rolled and she let out a big breath. Oh come on, it's pretty obvious. When he's around I've never seen you smile brighter. Then you turn into a big tomato and he is one of the first people you ever went against Otusan for. Naruto, being the reckless juvenile delinquent he was as a kid, not only instilled fear in the other children of Konoha but the adults, especially Hiashi Hyuga. He warned Hinata to stay as far as she could from him. But as present time could confirm, Hinata had other plans in mind. She not only befriended Naruto but also gained feelings for him. This caused fights between her father and her constantly, especially when Naruto had his secret visits. And by secret visits that meant Naruto hopping the fence and literally sneaking into the house to visit Hinata and to receive extra help on homework IGN ments. Hinata could still remember looking out the window one day yelling for her father to stop as he chased Naruto around the yard with a broom. Ooh, and there was also those diary entries, Hanabi mumbled. You went through my diary. Hinata shouted in shock. Well, I didn't go through. I just sorta peeked. Hey, it's no my fault you left it lying around. You should really keep that thing locked. And what's up with that Naruto-kun thing? You even call him that when you write about him. How long have you known each other again? Hinata let out an sound and pouted. It doesn't matter anyway, I'm done with those feelings, we're just regular friends now. Hanabi bursted out into laughter, holding her sides in an effort to control herself. Oh come on, we both know that's baloney, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. Hinata couldn't believe it. Why was it so hard for people to believe that she had actually gotten over Naruto? It wasn't like it was impossible. But then again, it was such a strong relationship they had. To give up the feelings you've had for another person for such a long period of time just like that would seem preposterous. However, Hinata would still continue to fight it. I'm serious, I barely feel anything when I'm around him anymore. Oni-san. I know, Hanabi said blankly. Hinata stared at Hanabi. What do you mean you know? She said, raising an eyebrow. I mean I know everything. Your friends told me about what has been going on with you and Naruto-Nisan. I call them every once in a while to check up on you. Hinata frowned. Her friends even got her sister involved. She knew they were trying to help, but this was just ridiculous. Hinata made a mental note to be more cautious when exposing information to her friends. Even so, that still doesn't change anything. I don't like him like that. Quote, really? Hanabi said with a skeptical look. So if Naruto-Nisan came up to you right now and told you he loved you and he wanted to be with you forever and ever, you would say no? That would never happen, Hinata said in defiance. But let's just say he did. Hanabi lifted up a finger. What would you do? She said, poking Hinata's face with each word. Hinata looked away and blushed, causing Hanabi to break out in laughter again. You don't even have to answer that question, I can see it in your eyes. You know you would totally grab him by the face and smash your lips against his like in one of those TV dramas or something, tongue and all. Quote, stop it, Hanabi, I would not. And you're too young to talk about such things anyway. Yeah, okay, Hanabi said sarcastically. Such a shame, and Otusan was just starting to warm up to him, but then he just had to go and break your heart and all. Hanabi let out a thoughtful sigh. Still, I'm rooting for you too. When you guys do get married and have kids, don't forget to visit me. Hanabi. And Hanabi, it has a nice ring to it. Hinata let out a defeated growl and looked at the ground. Hanabi chuckled. If there was anything she missed about her sister living here, it was teasing her. Alright, enough messing around, tell me what's going on in that head of yours. Quote. Hinata looked back at her sister with furrowed brows. What do you mean? Hanabi smirked. It's written all over your face. You have something on your mind, right? You seem unfocused and I find you looking off into space a lot. Something happened, didn't it? I'm your sister, you can't fool me. It was always puzzling to Hinata just how easy her sister could read her, even back to when they were young. Hanabi was the first person to always realize when something was off about her. Despite her age, Hanabi had her moments when she was very insightful and wise. It was always comforting to know that when she was down, she had her back. People always used to say Hanabi looked up to Hinata, but to her sometimes it was the other way around. Fine, since I know you won't leave alone me unless I tell you. But this stays between us for now, Hinata says, giving her sister a, I'm serious, sort of look. Hanabi nods her head, lay it on me. And Hinata does, telling her exactly what happened at the coffee shop in detail. She even expressed her thoughts and theories, while Hanabi, who seemed very interested, nodding her head every sentence and listened. So what do you think? Am I wrong? Do you think I have anything to do with why he's acting so weird? Hinata says, wrapping up her final thoughts. Hanabi hums and puts a finger to her cheek. Well, sounds like to me that Naruto Nisan might have a crush on you, Onisan. That's the only explanation I can come up with. Hinata blushed, but then tightened her fist in frustration. I'm serious, Hana, I need advice, she says sternly, growing tired of her sister's teasing. Hanabi looked at Hinata with bewilderment. What do you mean? I am sorry. Just then the sliding doors opened and Neji and Tenten emerged. Hey guys, the guards said you might be here, Tenten said. Hinata noticed that she had her arm wrapped around Neji's. She supposed that they talked things out like she thought. Hey you two, did you both just get here? Hinata said, walking towards them. Yes, actually we came to get you. Your father is calling for you, said Neji. Hinata's smile instantly faded. I see. Well, I guess we'll have to catch up at dinner then. Tenten noticed how glum Hinata had gotten and rested a hand on her shoulder. Don't worry, I'm sure everything will be okay. He didn't seem mad, so that's a good sign, right? Hinata forced a smile. Yeah, you're right. See you, she waved to her sister and then nervously went on her way. The long walk to her father's chamber was nerve-wracking. With every step, Hinata could feel her heartbeat faster. These little meetings her father had with her never went well. In the past they were long lectures consisting of what she was doing wrong and where she needed to improve, and a bunch of other things about the family and Honor. But maybe with this new personality her father had adopted there was hope. Still, Hinata could not shake that look in her father's eyes, like this was going to be about something huge. So when Hinata finally made it to the chambers, she just stood and stared at the doors. Her hand raised to knock at the door, but still her shaken fist would not colloid with it. She squeezed her eyes shut and breathed out, cheering herself on in her head. Come on, you got this, Hinata. It's just a small conversation, that's all, don't worry, everything will be fine, you're an adult now. And with that she knocked on the door. Just like the front doors, the chamber doors unlocked and opened instantly. There, sitting at his desk with only the dim light of the floor lamp lighting his face, was Hinata's father. His hands lay entwined under his chin and a serious look plastered on his face. Come in. Hinata meekly obliged and took in seat one of the chairs that lined up against the wall across from his desk. She then politely waited for her father to speak. She breathed out. I'm sure you're wondering why I called you here. Hinata flinched slightly. This is usually how his lectures started. As you know, your birthday is rapidly approaching. Quote. Hinata shifted in her seat, preparing herself. You will be 21, that's a grand age, and I would like to know what you have planned for the future. Hinata looked up at her father slowly. My future. She cleared her throat, trying desperately not to stutter in her father's presence. She didn't know how to answer that. She hadn't really put much thought into it. Sure, she wanted to graduate college, but after that, what did she want to do? After I graduate? Well, unfortunately, I haven't put much thought into that, she says, looking down, slightly disappointed in herself. I see. Very well, the family companies is still an option. You are the eldest daughter. The Hyuga family was very wealthy. They owned many businesses dedicated to vision health. In addition, they had also invested into many other popular companies that only added to their wealth. When Hinata was younger, she once held the sole responsibility of being the head of these companies in her father's place, but because of her lack of confidence and piv nature, her father paid the position down to her younger sister Hanabi and her cousin Neji, who were both more strong-willed and could handle the stress that came with the business. Hinata's head shot up hearing that. I thought that opportunity had been paid on to Hanabi and Neji. Our businesses have expanded greatly over the years you were gone. So much, in fact, I think Neji and Hanabi would have their hands far too full if it was just them. I also believe you have proven to have grown over the years, so I feel like I should put some faith in you. Hiyashi said, sipping the tea that sat on his desk. Hinata began to get emotional. His words in its own way had touched her heart. Oh, Otusan, are you sure? What if You will be fine, Hinata. He looked Hinata directly in her eyes. In the years you have been gone, I've had time to think. I was much too hard on you when you were younger, seeing you live freely with no difficulties, the amount of accomplishments you've made, this confidence you've built, all without me being in your presence, makes me wonder if I hadn't pushed you so hard, maybe it would have been for the best. Quote. So that's why he had been acting different. He had finally realized after all these years his wrongs. Those were the words she had wanted to hear from her father for so long, and she couldn't be happier. It's okay, Otusan, I think if it were not for your pushing to do better, I would not be as strong as I am today, Hinata said, smiling. He too somewhat smiled, something she hadn't seen him do in a long time. Now on to another important topic. You do know what usually occurs when a Hyuga reaches the age of 21, do you not? Hinata's smile went as quick as it appeared on her face. She knew exactly what her father was talking about. It had been something she had tried to push back and avoid as soon as she became officially an adult. She slowly nodded her head, trying to remain composed. I do, but it's so soon. I still need time. I haven't. Her words trailed off as began panicking. Hinata. You know I have done my very best to give you your freedom, but this, even I have not much control over. The elders are growing impatient. You know how important these matters are for them, Hiyashi says, looking to the side with a sigh. Hanabi still has many years and they haven't pestered Neji because they believe it won't be long before that occurs. His gaze once again meets Hinata's, but with you, they haven't seen any promise, and if you don't at least show them something they can place hope in, they will take care of this themselves. Hinata's eyes filled with worry. Please, oh please, Otusan. Can you not hold them off a little longer? She begged. Hiyashi looked at her, defeated. I cannot. If you don't present them with evidence soon, they will take action, and within a year you will have no choice in the matter. Hinata swallowed and bit down on her lip. She could feel tears building up in her eyes, but she refused to cry in her father's presence. So she just remained silent. That is all that I have requested your presence for. You are excused until dinner. He then went back to filling out documents. Hinata rose from her seat and left the room in a gloomy-like fashion. She attempts to push the doors open, but weight on the other side stops her. She pushes again and opens the door just in time to find Hanabi running down the hallway. Stop! Hinata calls after her. Hanabi freezes and slowly turns around, smiling and scratching her neck awkwardly. You caught me, huh? Hinata narrows her eyes. You know it's very impolite to listen to others' conversations, she said, ping her. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, but seriously, what are you going to do? Are you just going to give up like that? Hanabi said, following her. What other choice do I have? If I try to fight it, I will be disowned. This is a tradition that goes back generations to preserve the Hyuga, Hanabi, Hinata said, squeezing her fist. Hanabi looked at her sadly, but But it just isn't fair. You have a mind of your own, feelings of your own. It should be your decision to make. Hinata smiled painfully at Hanabi. I'm sure I will be fine. Don't worry, I will figure things out. She patted her sister's head with endearment. You still have a bit of time. What about? Hinata shook her head, stopping Hanabi. I already told you. That's over and done with, and there's no way they would accept that, especially with the past. Hanabi fell silent and did the only thing she could do and hugged her sister. Hinata hugged her back tightly, stroking her head. When I take over my part of the company, I'll make sure no other Hyuga has to go through this, I swear, Hanabi whispered. Me too, Hinata whispered back. The sun began to set, beginning the evening, and with that came dinner time. A huge banquet was thrown for Hinata's return, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed an army. Hinata took the opportunity to distract herself from the many issues that were on her mind. Smiling brightly and conversing with whoever she could. Maybe she was trying a bit too hard because she was questioned by Tenten, Neji, and Hanabi several times throughout the event. Are you sure she is going to be alright? Tenten said, dancing with Neji. Neji gave her quick twirl before responding. I am not sure. She insists she is, but even I can tell she is under tremendous stress. The couple glanced across the dance floor at Hinata, who was sitting down watching everyone dance with a blank stare. As much as they wanted to help, they knew they couldn't unless she told them the problem, but she refused, insisting everything was fine. The night continued. It would have been considered a good time if Hinata actually took the time to enjoy it. Once the banquet was over, Hinata couldn't be happier to return to her room. She unpacked the stuff she was going to need for the night, washed up, and plopped into bed. She stared up at her ceiling in thought. She had yet to comprehend why all this troublesome stuff had happened to her. All she wanted to do was be a normal college student with normal friends and live a normal life, but fate once again begged to differ. She pushed what her father had told her earlier out of her mind completely, but then an equally pressing thought just took its place. Her eyes drew to a small photo that sat on the nightstand. It was a picture of her and her friends on summer break posing for the camera. She had to be at least 15 at the time. A familiar face lightly draped his arm around her in the center and gave a peace sign with the other. His bright smile and alluring eyes drew Hinata even closer, thoughts of today filling her head. She reached out and stretched her arm to reach it. But a small knock at the door brings her back to reality. Yes. Who is it? It's Hana. Can I come in? She whispers, careful not to disturb those in the other rooms possibly sleeping. Hinata sits up in her bed. Yeah, you can come in, she whispers back. The door slightly creaks as Hanabi opens the door and slips in. She looks nervous for some reason, holding a pillow close to her chest, and rocks back and forth on her heels. What is it? Can't sleep. It's not that I can't sleep. Hanabi said, her words fading as her nervousness increased. Hinata raised an eyebrow at her sister's suspicious behavior. Then what is it? Hanabi summoned all her courage. Can I sleep with you? She blurted out. You know, for old time's sake. Hinata couldn't help but laugh a little bit at her sister's embarrassment, her face a very vibrant red. Of course you can, Hinata said, finishing her laughter, sliding over to let her sister climb in. Hinata liked this side of Hanabi, so innocent and childlike despite now being 16 years old. You better not tell Otusan or anyone about this, they'll make fun of me for sure, Hanabi warned, crossing her arms behind her head. Make fun of what? That you wanted to sleep in the same bed as your big sister like a big baby, Hinata said, taking the opportunity to tease her sister this time. Hey, I am not a baby, I am a mature, well-established lady, Hanabi argued, batting her eyelashes for emphasis. Hinata laughed. Good night, Hana. Hinata flipped over on her side and shut off her light, leaving only the moonlight to illuminate them. Hinata, Hanabi whispered, loosing the formality she usually used. Yes, Hinata says lazily, not turning around and drifting off to sleep. Everything's going to be alright, things will work themselves out, you just have to be patient. Just wait, it will be okay, I promise. And with that sleepover came the two Hyuga. However, far across the city someone remained restless, their minds so full of thoughts and emotions sleep never came. Naruto lazily placed his cheek in his hand with a sigh. He narrowed his eyes at the whiteboard before him and tried with all his will to pay attention to the words that were leaving his professor's lips. It was 8:30, the first CL he had that day and an important one at that. He needed this CL so he could one day build an amazing business. One so strong and successful, that he could take back the city that once belonged to his father and gain the respect he so desperately longed for from its citizens. Before his ping, Naruto's father had been one of Konoha's greatest leaders. He was intelligent and brave, he had all the skills and understanding that of a great leader should have. And to top it off, he was down to earth. He really valued his citizens as well as his family, making him even more likable among his people and other leaders. That balance between kindness and leadership was something Naruto admired, and after his death his desire to follow in his father's footsteps heightened. That had been his dream since he was a little kid, and he was determined to achieve no matter what. That's why he majored in business in the first place, so he could gain a decent grasp of how to run a business, and had been doing surprisingly well in the CL. He had a solid B, that all due to self-discipline and doing something that made him nauseous just thinking of it, studying. But today, as much as he tried to focus, his mind continued to wander. This probably was due to the conversations he had with his friends at the cafe 2 days ago. The effects of it became so stressful that a few nights, sleep never came for the young blonde. It was as if his body was not letting itself rest until he figured out just what was going on with him. Flashback. Sakura reached over and gently placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "Oh Naruto," she started, her eyes relaxing with empathy. "I think I can answer your question, you're jealous." Naruto's eyes widened in shock at her words. Jealous of Hinata and Tonari's possible relationship. Though that explanation eased the heartache he was experiencing, Naruto still refused to believe it. Jealous. Naruto pointed to himself and looked around, before facing them again. "Me? No, that can't be it. Why would I be jealous? That doesn't make any sense." Sakura shrugged her shoulders. "That's a question you should ask yourself," she said, fighting a smile from creeping on her face. She knew Naruto had to figure this out on his own. For now she would play ignorant and give him hints until he himself put the pieces together. "And besides, Hinata is my friend, if she likes that creep, I guess I should support her," Naruto said, trying to sound cheerful, but his smile slowly faded. This did not go unnoticed by his friends. "Naruto, did you feel a burning sensation in your chest after you said that?" Ino questioned curiously. Naruto's mouth flew wide open. "Yeah, actually that's weird." "How did you know?" he replied, genuinely surprised. Ino snickered. "Let's just say I've had a similar experience." Naruto just stared at her with a puzzled expression. What did she mean by similar experience? These days he felt like there was something going on that he was left out of. Sai was next to join the conversation. "So you're saying that the problem is the man Hinata likes?" "Well, yeah, I guess," Naruto responded. "I see. So if it were some other man you would be okay with it?" "Let's say for an example Kiba," Sai stated, slightly amused. "No way, Hinata," and dog breath. Naruto somewhat yelled. "That guy showers as much as I change tires, and how would he take care of her? He can't keep a job." No offense to Kiba, but I think Hinata would probably have a better shot with Akamaru if she's going that route. Then, like a child, he crossed his arms and exhaled sharply. Ino and Sakura desperately tried to contain their laughter seeing this. How could he even deny being jealous? It was so obvious. They began to wonder if he realized how outrageous his actions were. The moment Naruto heard a chuckle, he turned around to look at the two girls who were currently covering their mouths to hide their smiles. He narrowed his eyes at them. "What's so funny?" "So then, Naruto," Sai started, trying to gain back his attention, "what about Shino? He's known Hinata for quite a while as well, would he be a suitable choice?" Naruto looked at Sai like he grew a third head. "Shino? Question mark. Are you nuts?" I mean sure he's smart and all, but that guy has a unhealthy obsession with bugs. Have you ever visited his apartment? There's gotta be thousands of containers of bugs in there and Hinata's not a big fan of those. Naruto caught himself and stopped speaking to process his actions. He wondered why he was being so defensive. He was starting to see their point and hated every bit of it. Ino rubbed her chin and absent-mindedly wandered over toward Naruto. So Kiba's no good, Shino's no good, Tonari's no good, so who exactly would you be okay with Hinata dating? Ino awaited his answer with a lingering, sound. When there wasn't a response, the three's eyes were all on him. Naruto's mouth remained shut and his eyes darted back and forth in thought. That was a good question. Naruto hadn't really put any thought in the possibility of Hinata being in a relationship. Don't get him wrong, Hinata was a beautiful woman, she had the potential to get any man she desired. But he just kind of thought they'd just stay together. He knew it was unrealistic, but it was what he wanted to believe. After all, he knew he wouldn't be dating again for a while. Having Hinata by his side was reassuring. He knew he didn't have to worry about loneliness if she was there. Was that selfish of him? When Naruto was ready to speak, he cleared his throat and scratched the back of his neck. I don't know. I kinda just liked the way things were when there wasn't really any guy Hinata was interested in, and I was the main guy in her life. Sakura finished for him. Naruto's hand instantly covered his mouth. The realization shocked him. That had been sort of what he thought, but to hear it out loud sounded so weird and embering for some reason. His face soon turned red slightly. I wouldn't word it like da. Ino said, cutting him off with disbelief. Looks like we hit the nail on the head on this one, guys. Sai slid over to Naruto and Ino, with a pen and notepad in hand. That's very interesting, he said, scribbling something down on the pad. You know, I read in a book somewhere that when a man is in love that he wants no other man to involve themselves with the one he cares for deeply. Could that be the source of your troubles? Naruto tried to remain composed, but the weight of Sai's words sent him in a panicked state. Liking Hinata, just thinking of it set his body on fire. Deny was all his mind was telling him to do. What? Are you asking me if I have feelings for Hinata? His eyes blinked rapidly as all three of his friends nodded. You guys, there is no way that could be the reason. He gulped mid-sentence, the words themselves almost painful coming out his mouth. You have to understand, Hinata and I have been friends for a very long time, to just suddenly have feelings for a friend you've had for that long. It's impossible. He felt a familiar pain in his chest and his hand rushed to soothe it, rubbing it in circular motions. But even that didn't stop the pain. Sakura let out a deep sigh and shook her head. It was no use, Naruto was so close, but if keep up with this denial state he was in, nothing would progress. Sakura was determined to find a way for him to understand. You're not gonna budge, huh? She mumbled under her breath. Fine, if that's what you believe, I guess I can't force you to see the truth, but let me tell you this. Sakura leaned in towards Naruto, making sure to get his full attention. Based off of the few encounters I've had with that Tonari creep, I can tell you one thing, he's definitely has the hots for Hinata. Sakura smirked slightly, looking at Naruto. The reaction he gave her had been exactly what she had been looking for, a mixture of bewilderment, anger, and a bit of sadness. Shit, was the word she could make out from his subconscious mouthing. She wasn't sure that what she said was 100% true, but she thought this would be the little push he needed. Well, I better get back to work, Sakura said, leaving Naruto to digest his thoughts. Naruto looked over to Sai and Ino and saw them getting up as well. Wait, you guys are going too? He called after them. Ino looked over her shoulder. Yeah, me and Sai have to go finish our art project. Good luck, Naruto. She had picked up on what Sakura's plan was and decided to join. Started to exit the shop when she abruptly stopped and turned to face Naruto once again along with Sai. Hey Naruto. Naruto turned to look at her with an eyebrow raised. Yeah. Hurry up and figure out your feelings before it's too late, dumb. And with that she took Sai's arm and stomped off, leaving Naruto in a state of shock. End of flashback. The effects of their words still sat in his mind. Since then she was all he thought about. He'd think about when they first met in middle school and how that antsy weird girl that sat in the back of the CL room became his best friend. He'd catch himself smiling remembering the times they'd spent together over the weekends playing in the park up until their high school years and how he'd boast about him being the only one able to open up the very shy Hinata. But to think that all that joy he felt with Hinata would be taken away if she got a boyfriend, killed him. She wouldn't have time for him anymore. All the time they spend together would be used to spend with Toneri and he would barely see her and with time they'd grow apart. Plus just imagining Toneri all over Hinata holding hands boiled his blood, but as a friend he knew it wasn't right to intervene. The fact that something like Hinata being in a relationship even bugged him this much, worried him. His mind instantly went back to what his friends told him. I don't like her like that. I don't like her like that. Hinata is my friend, Naruto repeated tried to convince himself. Mr. Uzumaki, could you please answer the next question? His professor asked, snapping him out of his thoughts. Naruto hazily lifted his head and looked around. Me? He said, still completely out of it. His professor nodded his head and crossed his arms awaiting his answer, slightly annoyed. Naruto scratched his head desperately trying to come up with something logical to say, since he had not been paying the slightest bit of attention. The answer is. Naruto could tell the professor was losing patience by his violent foot tapping. 47. He blurted out, not thinking at all. The CL room echoed with loud laughter among the students. The professor, however, stood plain-faced with his arm crossed. Maybe that answer would be correct if this were a math CL, but it's not. This is a business CL. If you don't pay attention, will fall behind, Mr. Uzumaki. Naruto nodded his head rapidly and let out an embered laugh. But as soon as the professor turned his back, he drifted off to daydream land again. He didn't notice Kiba and Shino, who were sitting a few seats away from him watching his every move. Kiba leaned over towards Shino and whispered in his ear, he's going to break soon. Soon it was lunchtime and Kiba was the first one out of the CL room. He was late this morning and had to skip breakfast, so the only thing that had been on his mind all of today was food. And knowing how long the lines were in the cafeteria, he wanted to waste no time. But before he could make a mad dash down the hallway, there was a light tapping at his shoulder that made him stop completely. He turned around to see none other than Naruto standing there with an awkward expression on his face. Hey, he greeted. Kiba and now Shino, who caught up, greeted him back with smiles. Kiba decided since Naruto was here it was a good idea to figure out what was going through his head. He could also tell Naruto was desperately hoping he didn't pay attention to what happened in CL. You alright, man? Kiba questioned with furrowed brows. Naruto mirrored his look. What do you mean? You know what happened in CL? Me and Shino noticed you spacing out. A smirk grew on Kiba's face. Got something on your mind? Naruto began walking with them and shook his head. Nah, I'm fine, pretty hungry though, he said, trying to change the subject. But Kiba wasn't ready to end the conversation. You sure? Kiba said in a sing-song tone, catching Naruto's attention. He stopped walking and met Kiba's gaze, and once he saw his face expression, let out a big sigh. You heard about the conversation at cafe, didn't you? Naruto said blandly. That's right. Kiba bursted out into laughter, causing a smile to somewhat appear on Shino's face. Looks like you're hooked, huh? Wow, to think that Naruto Uzumaki would have a crush on our little Hina, he teased. Shut up, dog breath. I already told everyone it isn't like that, Naruto snapped, stomping off. Kiba jogged after him. Was it her personality or that great body of hers that gotcha? Kiba said, now thoroughly enjoying himself. Naruto groaned. I said shut your mouth. Let's just hurry up and get some food, I'm Santa. Just then Naruto's body collided with something hard, that sent him stumbling. Luckily he was able to support himself by the wall before he fell. He looks down to find none other than his ex Nina looking back up at him with a very unpleasant face expression. Nina. Naruto mumbled in shock. Nina had also attended Konoha University. That had been how Naruto had met her in fact. She was the typical ditz, good at things like dancing and arts and crafts, but when it came to actual school work, had somewhat of an empty head. It didn't take long before Nina figured out that college wasn't her thing and wanted to drop out. He begged her to stay, and for Naruto, who was also not really good at academics, to beg someone to stay in school meant something. But she wouldn't listen to him and went through with it, and to Naruto's knowledge dropped out. That had been one of the major arguments they had lead up to their brutal break. No, here she was standing before him dressed in regular clothing again, surprisingly. Still, he had no desire to question or even have a conversation with her, and judging by her expression, the feeling was mutual. Naruto narrowed his eyes. My bad, he mumbled, then quickly went around her to join Kiba and Shino again. Nina's glare followed him the whole way there. She then turned to her friend, who was a few feet away from her. Come on, Tamaki, let's go, it stinks over here. And with that, she sashayed off into the other direction. Her friend, however, stopped and gave Naruto a quick bow in apology and ran off behind her. Phew. Still has that same shitty attitude, huh? Kiba said, placing a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Yeah, well, you know. Some people never changed, Naruto said, and then the three men headed to the cafeteria. As soon as Naruto entered the cafeteria, he could feel stares on him. He looked across the cafeteria, and as he suspected, his friends all were looking at him with these coy expressions. Naruto turned to look at Kiba and Shino, who both looked back, chuckling to themselves. It was in that moment Naruto remembered that he had this conversation at the cafe with Ino present. So that meant everyone probably knew about it. After he got his food, Naruto marched over to his friends with a sigh. Alright, lay it on me. Say whatever you guys have to say, I'm ready, he said, sitting down with a plop. So are you going to be even more dorky around her now that you realize you're in love? Tenten teased, wasting no time. I don't like the idea. I don't know if I will be able to grow to accept this, but for now all I will say is don't hurt her, okay? Neji said with a sour attitude. Naruto rolled his eyes. Here we go. Look, I already said. And what's up with denial thing? It's pretty obvious that you like her. I mean, you fought some guy you didn't even know over her, Shikamaru said in his usual bored speaking manner. Naruto sucked his teeth. Well, that was because he. And you spend way too much time talking about her, Sasuke said, now also joining in. But that. Every conversation we've had these days are Hinata did this, and Hinata said that it's like give it a rest already. Everyone at the table nodded their head in agreement and added their input to Sasuke's comment. Yes, I completely agree, and Hinata is always at Naruto's house. It is very suspicious, Lee blurted out, causing an uproar. Yeah, what are you guys doing over there? Sakura said curiously. Nothing, we're Jew, Naruto started. Don't tell us, I don't want to hear it, Kiba said, cringing, imagining the possibility. No. Please do share, Neji said, cracking his knuckles, heat radiating off of him. Well, they are overly affectionate with each other, Ino added with a smirk. Alright, that's enough, Naruto yelled, growing tired of their questioning and bizarre theories. Everyone stopped talking and listened attentively. I'm going to say this for the final time, so everyone shut up and listen. Hinata is my best friend. If I had feelings for Hinata, it would be pretty obvious, and it would have destroyed our friendship completely a long time. I mean, come on guys, you know how I act when I like a girl. Especially you, Sakura. Sakura cringed. Let's not bring that up again. And as her friend, I want nothing but the best for he plus. Naruto paused and pointed to himself with both hands. Look at me, there's no way Hinata would ever like someone like me. Hinata is special. She's one of those rare kinda girls. You know, the ones who are beautiful inside and out. Naruto looked off into space like he was thinking of something. Someone like that deserves better than just a lame kid with a dream. Damn. Well, when you put it like that. Kiba scratched his chin and put one finger up when he gathered his thoughts. It sounds like you don't have a crush. You have a mega crush. Everyone laughed except Naruto, who was now turning red in anger and in emberment. He was tired of his friend making what he thought of as a serious matter into a joke of some sorts. He did not have a crush on his friend and he determined to prove it. You know what? I'm going to prove it to you guys, Naruto yelled, shooting out of his seat. Oh really? I'd love to hear how, Shikamaru said sarcastically, raising his head from the table. I'm gonna text Hinata and we're going to hang out today and you guys can do your usual spying on us thing, Naruto said, now fired up. That way I can show all of you that there's no feelings between us and we're just regular friends. Everyone looked at each other and whispered. Finally Sasuke spoke up. Fine, let's do it, but we all know you won't be able to last long without being all loving devey with her. A motivated smile grew on Naruto's lips as he pointed to his friends. You'll see, you all will see. Meanwhile across the city, Hinata Hyuga herself was preparing for lunch as well. Her mind was overwhelmed with thoughts and feelings. So much had occurred over past few days between that awkward situation with Tonari and this new issue with Naruto, and what her father had said to her a few nights ago, she didn't know how much more she could take. It seemed like ever since she returned to Konoha it was one traumatic situation after the next. She decided she needed a mental break and instead of eating at the usual loud and crowded cafeteria she would enjoy her lunch in the quiet comforting library once again. But to her displeasure, that goal seemed impossible. A familiar pale fellow caught her eye just as her foot entered the library and as soon as she realized who it was she bolted. There in her usual spot sat one of the sources of her stress, Tonari Osuzuki, who seemed to be happily enjoying his lunch without a care in the world. Hinata cursed her luck. Ever since that time on Hokage Monument the two had not spoke a word to each other. Hinata Yumed he was mad at her and gave him his space, but she hadn't yet had an occurrence where the two crossed paths since then, so it was easy. Now however Hinata had two options: she could find a quiet corner to eat her lunch and continue to ignore him, or she could face her fears and squash the issue completely. Hinata was feeling a bit brave today and decided to go with option 2. She meekly slid her way back into the library and took a deep breath. She then slowly started to make her way towards Tonari. Her footsteps naturally drew his attention to her. Hello Tonari-kun, Hinata said shyly, standing in front of him. Tonari lifted his head up to look at her with no emotion. Hello. His plain response left an awkward atmosphere between the two. Hinata decided to try to form a conversation. So, how have you been? Fine. Tonari then began eating his lunch, leaving the conversation hanging. Hinata decided it was probably a better idea to get to the point. You see, about the other night I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for what happened. Tonari's eyes widen in shock. My friends. Well, maybe even I too did a little. Just Yumed, you had certain intentions without giving you the proper opportunity to explain yourself. That was wrong, especially on my part. I'm your friend. Hinata paused in thought, trying to get her words together. What I'm trying to say overall is, I'm sorry for putting you in a situation like that. Quote. There was silence before a warm smile appeared on Tonari's face. It's quite alright, I am not mad at all actually. Hinata is surprised. Really? I've had time to properly digest the situation. To any stranger, I guess a man and woman going to such a place seems a little bit suspicious. I suppose I should have been more concerned if your friends did not intervene, Tonari said, chuckling to himself. No matter. We are friends just as you said, and I would hate for something like this to end our friendship, so I apologize. For putting you in a difficult situation as well. Hinata smiled. So, friends again. Tonari put a thumb to his chin. Well, only if you make up for our failed afternoon together today. This time with no interruptions. Hinata was about to answer when her phone vibrated. She lifted up one finger to indicate 1 second, and pulled out her phone from her pocket to read it. It was from Naruto. Naruto. Hey, it's me. I was wondering if you weren't busy after school today, if we could do something. My treat. Hinata sighed. She was stuck in another sticky situation again. She wondered why Tonari and Naruto both had to make plans with her at the same time. It was always difficult for her to choose knowing she would upset someone. Tonari became alarmed by the change in her face expression and reached for Hinata's phone. Tonari-kun, what are? I'm getting rid of any distractions, Tonari says, replying back to Naruto in Hinata's place. Hinata. I can't, I'm busy today. He then handed Hinata back her phone with a pleased smile on his face. There. One less person to bother us. Hinata felt unnerved by this. Tonari was acting a little more forceful than usual and it left Hinata's wondering what could be the cause of it. Still, she just nodded her head and pushed back the nerves that boiled up in her stomach. Well, now that that's taken care of, I'm going to head back to CL, Tonari said, standing up. I will come by around 5 to pick you up. Dress formal. Oh, and please this time don't let your friends know anything about our meeting. We wouldn't want a repeat of last time, would we? Again, Hinata silently nodded and waved to Tonari as he walked off to his CL. It was only until he left did she realize he was in the library for a purpose. He was waiting for her. Naruto looked down at his phone in disappointment. Aw man, he grumbled, releasing a deep breath and raking a hand through his hair. She can't make it, she's busy. Everyone turned to look at him. As they all expected, he looked saddened but quickly tried to play it off. Haha, oh well, another time I guess. Naruto said, forcing himself to laugh. But on the inside he worried. He wondered if she was still upset at him for his strange actions at the cafe. Naruto, you're frowning. It bothers you, doesn't it? Sakura said with a smile. Naruto was thrown off by her comment. What do you mean? It doesn't, she's busy, I understand that. Still, he couldn't fight a frown from growing on his face. Ah, how cute, you're upset you couldn't hang out with your Hinata. Wow, you sure are. Ho. Kiba is forced to stop talking when an apple collided with his face. This causing him to go tumbling from his seat. There, that should shut you up. Naruto growled, taking a seat once again. Still, Ino rested her head in her hands. I wonder what she's doing. Bunny seems busy a lot these days. Everyone nodded their heads and came of suggestions and ideas. But there was one person at the table who seemed to have a clear idea of what she was doing. I bet she's with him again, Naruto said to himself. He did not touch his lunch at all that day. The day continued, and when classes were over, Naruto and his friends met up in the parking lot like they usually did before they left for the day. Sakura couldn't help but stare at Naruto. You could tell there was a lot on his mind. He even tried opening up the wrong car with his keys. Poor guy, Sakura said, turning towards Sasuke. But at least I see some progress. He's definitely stumped. It won't be long before he realizes. Sasuke simply nodded his head. Now that things are settling down, maybe you will have more time to think about your own issues. Sasuke put his hands in his pockets and began walking away. Sakura was confused for a moment by Sasuke's words but slowly realized what he was talking about. She had not yet found the time to have a discussion about the status of their relationship. She tried, like the other night at her apartment, but there always seemed to be interruptions or something important that came up that occupied her time. Still, what really was there to talk about on her part? She already had made her feelings for him clear years ago, middle school through high school, several times. Sakura loved Sasuke and always would, but he was always so cold to her she could never tell if he felt the same. Even that night at the club when he kissed her, he had never once said to her he had feelings for her. You're talking about that, aren't you? Sakura called after him, now suddenly nervous. I'm sorry, you know I've tried. We're always interrupted. Sasuke stops walking, but doesn't face her. She hears him mutter some things she doesn't understand. He finally turns around to face her, his face ice cold just as always. Maybe it's better this way. Sakura's eyebrows furrowed. What do you mean, what's better this way? Let's just pretend. That night never occurred. That's what you want, right? Sasuke said without a stitch of emotion. It doesn't really seem like it's important to you anyway. Sakura did not say a word, she just stood there with her mouth agape. Her worst fears were unwrapping right before her. No, she wasn't going to give in, she worked too hard to get to this point. He was finally within reaching grasp and there was no going back now. She didn't care how strong she came on or what he thought of her afterwards, she was going to make sure that Sasuke and her feelings were understood. No more hiding, no more running and definitely no more waiting. Sakura balled her fist and pulled her arm back before punching Sasuke in the arm as hard as she could. Sasuke retracted his arm and petted it in pain. What the hell was that F? He stopped speaking when he saw Sakura's face. She was fuming, her face was now stained a light pink and her teary eyes froze Sasuke in silence. How could you? No. How dare you? Sakura yelled, tears flying from her eyes. Her gaze left his and met the floor. That night might have been nothing to you, but for me. Sakura looked at him once again. It was something I will never forget. Just stop playing with my emotions already. Sasuke's eyes widened before quickly growing cold again. But aren't you doing the exact same thing? Sasuke yelled back, silencing Sakura. If that night was so important to you, then why did you avoid me? What's wrong with me doing the same thing you're doing and pretending nothing happened? Sakura doesn't answer, she just stared at Sasuke in shock. He had never been so open before, see him act out like this told her this too was eating him up inside. Sasuke let out a chuckle, God, I'm so stupid. Is that really how you feel, Sasuke-kun? Did me ignoring you bother you that much? Sakura felt guilt consuming her. I had no idea. Just stay out of my head, Sasuke mutters, now looking away from her. What? Sakura questions, confused. Sasuke met her gaze with a serious expression. You're in my head, like an annoying ringing in my ears, I'm changing. You're making me have thoughts and feelings I've never experienced before. My chest is on fire, my stomach's in knots, and when I'm around you breathing becomes difficult. It's like you've performed some ritual on me and it's irritating, so just stop it, okay? Sakura's frown turned into a bright smile slowly. She didn't think Sasuke realized the true depth of his words, but she didn't care, this was more than what she could ever wish for. She finally got her answer, whether he would openly say it or not, and she couldn't be happier. Sasuke looked at Sakura with a raised eyebrow and when he saw her smile grow even bigger, looked away. I'm leaving, Sasuke says and begins walking off again. But wait, what about going home? Don't you need a ride? Sakura pleaded frantically. I'll carpool with the idiot, Sasuke said, not turning around. But we didn't finish our conversation. When he didn't respond, Sakura let out a frustrated sigh. Then suddenly an idea popped into her head, causing another smile to come to her face. She cupped her hands at the edges of her mouth and yelled out to Sasuke as loud as she could. I'm in love with you, Sasuke-kun. He suddenly stopped walking but still didn't turn around. But she was sure he must have heard her. Sakura's wasn't sure if it was her eyesight, but she could have sworn she saw his ears turn pink. But Sasuke blushing was highly unlikely, so Sakura assumed it was her imagination. Soon he began walking again. I really do love you, she says one final time, smiling in amusement as he faded into the distance. She hoped this was the beginning of something different between them finally. As soon as the young Hyuga got home, all she could hear was her bed calling her name. She drearily kicked off her shoes and dived into the sweet comforts of her soft bed. For her last CL of day she had a major exam that sucked the life out of her. She had studied all week for it, and now that it was done it was time for a nap. But a sudden memory caused her to sit up once again. Toneri. She had completely forgotten about their promise to meet after school today. Hinata let out a groan, her nap plan went completely out the window. She leaned back against her pillows and stared at the ceiling in thought. Hinata didn't understand what had caused Tonari to have this sudden urge to hang out with her recently. Yes, she did rely on him when she was going through some drama with Naruto, and she supposed that they did do a little bonding in the process, but it seemed like every chance he got he was inviting her out somewhere, meeting up with her unexpectedly, and giving her rides to school and work. It was like he was scared to let her out of his sights. This little fight they had given her a break from that, but now that they made up it seemed like it was back to that again. A sudden vibration sensation woke her from her thoughts. Feeling too lazy to turn around, she used one hand to feel around her bed for her cell phone. Her chest fluttered as she read the name on the caller ID. It was Naruto. Her finger swiped to the message a little faster than she expected. She surprised herself. Naruto. Hey, how are you? I haven't heard from you since went on that family thing. Did everything go alright? Hinata bit her lip. She wanted to respond, but she wasn't sure if he was going to question her on what she was doing that was keeping her so busy. After all, she had enough time to respond. If Naruto found out that she was hanging out with Tonari by herself again, he would flip out for sure. She understood Naruto's reasoning. Tonari's up until now seemed a bit sketchy from her friend's perspective. But they also hadn't seen Tonari's sweet side. Why would someone who had treated her with so much care and gave her so much support try to harm her? If that were the case, wouldn't he have tried something a long time ago? What would he be waiting for? Hinata just couldn't wrap her mind around it. Besides, what was there to worry about? They were probably just going for a walk or maybe some food, and those were public places, so he couldn't try something even if he wanted to. Hinata breathed out. She was putting way too much thought into this. She decided to play it safe and send him a simple message, nothing he could read into. Hinata. I'm fine, everything went alright, so don't worry, I'm really busy, we'll talk another time, okay? Hinata then turned off her phone and slid it under her bed to prevent herself from looking at it. She knew this was for the best. This way there would be no distractions tonight. She had to make up for her mistake the other night. Tonari dissevered that at least, it was only fair he was her friend. Sorry, Naruto-kun, Hinata said to herself. As if he heard her across town, laid across his bed, tightly gripping his phone to point to where it might break. He stared at the ceiling above him, dazed. He couldn't believe his own body. He was so sure that he could cut her from his thoughts with the blink of an eye. No problem, he thought, but here he laid with so much worry and desire to see her, his fingers appeared to move on their own. And before his mind could catch up to his body, he had sent that message. What the is wrong with me? He cursed. It seemed he couldn't resist the urge at all. Time skip. Tonari exited his truck and politely walked around to the other side to open the other door for his guest. He offered his hand to her and she shakenly accepted it. Her heels, though only 2 inches, made coming out the car quite the difficult task. Once out, Hinata Hyuga looking around at her surroundings. This was definitely the wealthier side Konoha. Name brand stores, 5 restaurants and lavish townhouses lined the streets. This triggering the burning memories of business dinners Hinata was forced to attend with her father to rush into her mind. To add to the shock effect, restaurant that we're standing in front of had to be one of the most popular ones there, the Shining Star. It was well known for its fine crews and beautiful interior. So why was Hinata standing there shaking in her heels instead of jumping for joy? Well, there was one important question ringing in her head. How the hell was Tonari going to pay for this? You look lovely, Hinata-san, I must say, Tonari said, smiling as they entered the restaurant. Thank you. You did say dress formal, Hinata said, adjusting her knee-length maroon evening gown. Though I am surprised, I never expected to be going here. Are you sure this is okay? I've been here before, it's well expensive. Tonari let out a light chuckle, surprising Hinata. Do not worry. I have plenty to cover this, trust me. Hinata gave him a puzzled expression. Did that mean Tonari came from a wealthy family? Soon the two took their seats and the first thing Tonari did was extend his hand out to Hinata. Her head tilted to the side slight in confusion. Your phone, Tonari said, answering her unspoken question. Oh. Hinata reached in her purse awkwardly. It's off. You don't have anything to worry about, she says, handing the phone to him. After a quick look over, he handed it back to her with a pleased expression. Good. The evening continues and Hinata was actually having a decent time. After they ordered their food, they broke out in a casual conversation about things like school and work, though Hinata soon realized that Tonari didn't really reveal too much about himself. All she was able to get from him was that he was really into astronomy. His father owned some business to which she never really got the name of, and he was an only child. Most of their conversation consist of things about her and the Hyuga business and family. Actually, a lot about the Hyuga business and family now that she thought about it. Another thing that bothered her was that he was too polite even for her, and she was a really polite person herself. She told him numerous times to be himself, but he seemed to be too set in his ways. You know, you don't have to keep referring to me as Hinata-san, just Hinata is fine, all my friends call me that. Tonari held up his hands and shook his head. Oh no, I couldn't possibly even dream of calling you anything of the such, just speaking on first name basis is already much for me. I feel so rude. Hinata sighed in defeat. Fine. But can you at least stop saying please and thank you so much? It's just me, Hinata said, feeling odd. Being the one to say that to another person. Tonari's cheeks dusted a light pink and he bashfully nodded his head. I will try. Soon the waiter arrived with their food with an oddly pleased smile on their face. Here are your meals. Ah, what a lovely couple you are, I'm jealous really, the waiter said, clasping his hands together to add to the affect. Hinata felt a shiver run down her spine as soon as the words left his mouth. The thought of her and Tonari even growing to be a couple had never crossed her mind. He was, well, not her type. He has seemed more like good friend or a kid brother to her. The idea was impossible. She wondered what they could have been doing to cause a ridiculous thought to enter his head. Couple? Oh no, we're not a couple at all, Hinata blurted out. Out of the corner of her eye she could see Tonari's face drop just a little for some odd reason. No way, seriously, the waiter exclaimed. Ah, and here I thought you two were on a date, he said, pouting a bit. No, just two friends eating out together, Tonari answered robotically. Just. Two friends. Oh well, enjoy your meal you two, and with that the waiter took off, leave awkwardness in the air. Hinata stared off in another direction to avoid Tonari's gaze. Now looking into it, was this a date? They were two adults out having a meal together in formal clothing alone. It seemed like a date to her. Hinata ran a frustrated hand through her hair. How did she get herself into this? Was she the only one who thought of this as a simple hanging out with a friend deal? Had Tonari been thinking this was a date this entire time? Because if that were the case, when she said she wanted him to forgive her, she wasn't willing to do something like this to achieve that. But then again, her and Naruto hanged out together all the time alone. So maybe he wasn't thinking that way. However, Hinata did have a crush on him for a good portion of those outings, and that wouldn't explain that disappointed look Tonari had given her. Before Hinata could summon the courage to question Tonari, the loud snapping of a camera sent Tonari and Hinata looking in all directions. Ooh, there, I just so cute, had to take picture. A familiar voice called out. Yet for some reason Hinata could not find the source of it. Soon more flashes went off and Hinata's eyesight blurred. She was surprisingly not used to several people taking photos of her despite her father's company being so huge. Being the supposed failure daughter as her father once called her, the media never gave her much attention. Neji and Hanabi, however, were a different story. When the company was really booming, they were on the cover of almost every newspaper in Konoha. Hinata actually preferred it this way, it gave her much more freedom. But these flashing lights Hinata was all too familiar with. They weren't media's cameras, they were cell phone cameras. Tonari, however, did not process as this, the lights far too bright for him to see. Come on, let's get out of here, he said, pulling Hinata from her seat. If my father finds out I've been spending my time like this, he will be livid. But wait, those are not. Hinata's words were lost as she struggled to keep up with Tonari's fast-paced steps. The flashing continued until the two were completely outside the restaurant and a loud laugh filled the remaining silence. What are you doing, Nina? This is wrong. Her friend Tamaki yelled, struggling to retrieve her cell phone from her grasp. Nina smiled wickedly. Wrong? What's so wrong about it? We were just taking pictures of a lovely couple, right, girls? 3 other girls sitting with them yelled in agreement, followed by laughing. Tamaki growled and stood up from her seat. When you said let's hang out today, this isn't what I wanted to be doing. I know what you're up to. Tamaki said, glaring at her friend. Tamaki, relax, would ya? I'm just trying to prove a point here. Naru seems to think that girl is so much better than me, so I just want to. Enough. I don't want to hear it, I'm out of here. Tamaki then started to stomp off when Nina grabbed her arm. Fine, run off, leave your best friend in the dust just like you always do. Nina barked at her. Tamaki's face fell slightly in guilt. But at least send me those pictures I took on your phone, you know how much this means to me. Tamaki ripped her arm from her friends and walked off in the other direction without a response. I'm serious, Tamaki, do it. Nina called after her friend as she exited the restaurant. Outside, Tonari and Hinata stood leaning against a wall, breathing heavily, not paying attention to the girl leaving the shop, giving them a sad glance. Whoa. That was pretty frightening, wasn't it? Tonari said, his breathing returning back to its normal state. Hinata decided to let it go and not explain to him that those were not media cameras. It was just probably a bunch of boyfriendless teenage girls looking for something to post on their relationship goals blog or something. But why did one of their voices sound so familiar? Yeah, it was. Hopefully they didn't get any clear pictures, Hinata said, playing along. Yeah. Well, I bet you're tired from doing all that running. Do you mind waiting here? I will bring the truck around. When the two had ran out, they had taken closest exit, which was the back one, so the truck was now on the other side of the store. No, please don't trouble yourself, we can walk around, it's fine, Hinata pleaded. No, I insist, it's the least I can do, plus I do not want to accidentally run into the media again. Finally Hinata gave in and nodded her head. She knew there was no use in arguing with him. Tonari was very stubborn at times. So there she stood quietly behind a store waiting for Tonari's return. Tonight, though it didn't end like it was planned, it wasn't all bad. Sure, there was the possibility that Tonari thought of it as a date which concerned Hinata, but if he didn't, today was a decent experience, and if Tonari wanted to hang out as friends another time, maybe she wouldn't feel as hesitant. A light tapping sound from behind Hinata caused her to spin around, but when she looked, there was nothing there but darkness. She prayed it was a stray cat. Or something. She began feeling uneasy. Where was Tonari? How long did it take for a truck to come around a corner? Maybe he lost his keys. Hinata said, trying to convince herself. Whatever the reason may have been, she hoped he hurried. The area she was in began to creep her out. Suddenly the trash bin behind her knocked over and Hinata shrieked, jumping forward. Luckily, what emerged from the darkness was nothing frightening in the slightest. A small mouse the size of her palm ran past her feet. Phew. You scared me, little fellow, Hinata said, watching it run away. Not what she was expecting, but whatever. But then a troubling thought entered her head. How could a mouse knock over a trash can? Then all Hinata could see was darkness. Something leathery went over her eyes and something cold and metallic pressed against her neck. Fear beyond belief filled her stomach, but not a sound left her lips. Don't move, said a sinister voice that pierced her ears. I don't want to hear anything screaming either, you hear me? He said, pushing the metal object into her neck in threatening manner. Hinata didn't answer him, her voice still lost in her throat, but her head somehow was able to nod. Good girl. Now hand over the purse. And don't try anything funny or I'll blow your pretty little brains out. So she was right, it was a gun. Hinata as child had special training like for occasions like this. After all, she did come from a wealthy family, there was always people who were after their wealth. But this had been the first time she actually had been placed in a real situation where she had to use it. She took a deep breath and remembered her father's words. Remain calm, she repeated to herself as she moved her hand as if she was getting her purse. Hinata felt the force against her neck loosen and took her opportunity. Her other hand went quickly around her neck, grabbing the gun and tilting it up and away from her head, and she spun around. What are you? Hinata then with all her strength kicked the man away, her heels sinking into his gut, leaving the gun in her hands and him on the ground. She cautiously walked over to the man with the gun aimed at him. Who are you? Hinata called out, though still frightened. The man lifted his head. The white mask he was wearing was cracked a little, exposing a bit of his skin, but he was still unrecognizable. Ah. Argu, you bitch. I will ask you again, who are you? Hinata said a little more forcefully. Judging by his attire, Hinata knew he wasn't some bum off the street trying to make some quick cash. This man was hired, his gun also had some weird logo on it, so this must have been his job. Who hired you? Why are you targeting me? The man masked head moved towards Hinata's legs, they were shaking. This caused a smile to form under the man's mask. You're scared, aren't you, Ms. Hyuga? I'm the one asking the questions here. The man got more daring and stood up from the ground without any fear. Don't move, I'll shoot. The man began walking towards her. I said don't move, I swear I'll do it, Hinata yelled, but she found her feet moving backwards and her fingers shaking on the trigger. Soon she had no more room to move and she found herself against the wall, the gun still in her hands, still shaking. The man laughed wickedly, such a weak girl. He then ripped the gun from her hands, leaving her defenseless. You were never going to be able to do anything. And look, the man pressed the gun against her forehead. Hinata squeezed her eyes shut, preparing herself for the impact. But when he pulled the trigger, no bullets ever came. I didn't need any bullets to win. The man then pulled Hinata's purse from her arm and began walking off. Hinata held onto her chest, her heart beating rapidly. She couldn't just stand here and let that man steal her purse, she had valuable information in there. Who knew what whoever hired this man planned to do with it? She knew the man was a lot stronger than her, but she would have to try. Hinata summoned all her and charged after the man, throwing her arm around his neck in a headlock. Ah, you bitch. The man rasped, trying to catch his breath. You just don't give up. He then flung her off of him, sending her tumbling on the ground, but not before she was able to grab her purse. She tried to get up quickly, but her knees were in pain from the fall and she was not fast enough. She manages to get halfway up before the man grabs her leg and pulls it, sending her back down to the ground with a scream. Just me, give the me purse, damn you. The man flips her over so that she's on her back and he's on top of her. Hinata fights desperately with the man, trying to hold on to her purse, until he has one hand wrapped around her neck, constricting her breathing. Soon Hinata becomes weak and her hand, unwilling, leaves the purse. He then gets up, leaving her gasping for air. Please, don't, Hinata shakily begs, still holding onto the man's foot. I wonder what he sees in you. You're just another pathetic money-grubbing Hyuga. The man kicked Hinata's hands off of him, injuring them further. He then took off into the shadows. Hinata can barely move from her spot on the ground, her whole body is sore from the struggle. From what she could feel, one of her wrists were definitely sprained. Still she forces herself up on her brushed hands and leaned against the wall next to her. Every movement sent waves of pain running up her body. She looks down at her legs to see them covered in cuts. But despite that, the only that was running through her mind was failure. She couldn't stop the man no matter how hard she tried. Just like when she was little, she was never strong enough. She was just as that man called her weak. Hinata-san. Oh my god, Hinata-san. Tonari yelled, running towards her. Hey, can you hear me? Who did this? Please speak to me. Tonari kneeled down and lifted her head. Tonari-kun. My purse, eh? Man, he took it. Hinata said, tears building up in her eyes. Tonari became enraged, something Hinata didn't see often. Shish. Don't say any more, I got you. Tonari delicately took Hinata into his arms, lifting her up. Hinata winced in pain as Tonari placed her into his car. Which way did he go? Did you see? Hinata shakenly lifted a finger towards the dark alley the man came from. Tonari turned around and started to run in that direction when Hinata grabbed his shirt. Tonari looked at her in surprise. Don't go, please, she pleaded. Tonari got on both knees and took Hinata's hands in his. I promise I won't let anything bad happen to you ever again. I will protect you with my life. Please stay here, I will be back, I'm sure of it. Hinata looked into Tonari's eyes and nodded, fighting off any more tears from leaving, locked the car door and took off into the darkness, leaving Hinata by herself and scared out of her mind. Soon Tonari was at the end of the alley and looked around. There, standing by the street light, was the masked man. But instead of running over to the man and beating the crap out of him, Tonari calmly walked over to him. The masked man removed his mask, revealing his face. He had pale eyes with a scar just above his right eye, with skin and hair color that resembled Tonari's. Did you get what I told to? Tonari says, his face now emotionless. The man kneeled down before Tonari and offered him Hinata's wallet. Yes, just as you asked, here it is, the Hyuga's wallet, young master. Tonari snatched the wallet from his hands and looked at it. Perfect. He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a stack of cash. Here's your pay. Be gone. The man stood up and flipped through the bills. Hey, you're short $100. Tonari shot him a threatened glare. Hurting Hinata-san was not a part of the plan. Hey, that bitch put up a fight, I had to. Tonari grabbed the man by the collar and with one hand lifted him up and slammed him against the wall so hard his head began to spin. Do not speak of Hinata-san like that, you fool. Tonari hissed. Fear like no other filled the mont's eyes. Your lucky money was the only thing I took from you. Now get out of here and make sure you're not followed, Tonari said, dropping him to the ground. The man scrambled to his feet, picking up his money from ground, and then as fast as the wind ran out of Tonari's sight. Fool, Tonari mumbled, jogging back to attend to Hinata. When he opened the car door, Hinata sat on the car seat, hugging her knees, her tears soaking them. The look of relief she gave him sent delightful shivers up his spine. Why, you're back, Hinata said. Oh, thank goodness, did you find him? You're not hurt, are you? Tonari's cheeks burned from holding back his smile. This had been what he wanted all along, Hinata's attention, her concern. Ever since he first laid eyes on her, she had been all he wanted. And he was determined to have her no matter what. No, I'm sorry I couldn't find him, Tonari said, forcing a sad look on his face. But let's worry about that later, you're hurt. He then slid in the seat next to her and put her legs on his thighs. He then reached in the back seat and took out a water bottle and some napkins he had in the glove department. I don't have a first aid kit, but we have to at least attempt to clean those cuts. The dirt will cause an infection. Hinata winced in pain as he used the wet napkins to clean her wounds. Thank you, Tonari-kun, Hinata said weakly. Tonari smiled gently at her. You don't need to thank me. Then something startling caught Tonari's attention. Hinata's left wrist was swollen and sporting a purplish blue color. Hinata-san, your wrist, it's. Tonari went to touch it and Hinata retracted her arm. Please don't touch it. It hurts, Hinata said, holding it against her chest. Hinata-san, I need to. It looks bad, Tonari said, gently pulling her arm towards him. He then flipped it over to exclaimed it. It's worse than I thought, it looks sprained. That bastard, when I get my hands on him. Tonari stopped speaking, realizing he might be revealing too much. Here. Tonari grabbed his sleeve and ripped a piece off. Then very gently wrapped around Hinata's wrist. Hinata cried out in pain, but soon the tightening from the cloth minimized it. There, that should do for now, but tomorrow you should see a doctor can take you if you wa. What am I going to do? Hinata blurted out. Tonari could see fear and panic take over the poor girl. He has my wallet, my student ID, my address, my phone number, my credit card were all in that purse. Hinata began sobbing. What if he comes after me again? Tonari took the opportunity to comfort Hinata, pulling her into his chest and stroking her head while she cried. Shish, everything will be okay, I'll take care of you, remember my promise. I will protect you, Tonari cooed. Soon a wide smile spread on his face unknown to Hinata. No one else will be able to come near you again, I alone will be by your side, forever, he whispered as he rested his chin on her head. Meanwhile, Naruto violently tossed and turned in his sleep. Soon he gave up and sat up in his bed. Yet another sleepless night for the young Uzumaki. The source of his restlessness. You guessed it, Hinata Hyuga. After she had responded to his text message, he had sent her several messages, and when she didn't respond he had even called her, but cowardly hadn't left any messages. He wondered why it was so hard to accept the fact she was busy and couldn't talk to him. But his answer entered his head, Tonari. He tried to convince himself he didn't care, that despite him being a little creepy he seemed to really care about Hinata. Still he couldn't shake that sickening feeling in his gut and his eyes remained open. Then again that creep did look at her like piece of cake rather than a human being. He tried to take her to Hokage Monument for whatever wrong reason, and he picked a fight with him in a club, seemed like a pretty strange guy. Plus relationships in his book were stupid anyway, they were a lot of work and sometimes for nothing. What was so bad about the way things were now? If Hinata was lonely he would gladly be there for her, wasn't that enough? The only difference was in relationships you hold hands and all that mushy stuff in shoujo mangas. Was that what Hinata wanted? Suddenly the image of Hinata and Tonari kissing entered his mind and Naruto lost it. He picked up his pillow and chucked it across room, knocking random objects in the process. He stared down at his hands and noticed they were shaking just like before. It was in that moment he realized he had to see her. He hopped out of his bed, not even attempting to change out of his sleep attire, and headed straight to his car. Just once, just one more time so he could sleep, the blonde recited in his head as he drove full speed to her apartment. Once there he wasted no time and practically ran up the stair to her apartment. It was only until he was standing right in front of her door did he realize how insane his actions were. Here he was in the middle of the night in boxers and a t-shirt, standing out his best friend's door, because the thought of her being with some guy keep him up at night. Naruto let out a airy laugh. God, I'm such a idiot. It all made sense now. Some purple fabric in the corner of his eye made him turn around. It was a curtain coming from Hinata's open window, blowing delicately in the wind. He wanted to look in, but his mind told him not to do it. He didn't want to seem like some perv, but he didn't anyway. There, laying peacefully on her back with her long tresses fanned across the pillows beneath her, was the girl who had been haunting his mind. The warming sight brought a smile to Naruto's face as he carefully closed the window, making sure not to alert the sleeping beauty. He walks back to his car, gazing at stars above him in thought. His friends were right, he didn't want any man to be with Hinata, he wanted her all to himself. That was the reason why he had been acting so strange. He had been subconsciously pushing those feelings away for the sake of their friendship. Feelings from as far back as their days in high school came rushing into his mind, and it was at that point did he realize that these feelings had been in him for a while and he had been fighting them for so long. But no more, he was done fighting. He had thrown in the towel and accepted it. Naruto Uzumaki had fallen hard for his best friend Hinata Hyuga. And boy, was this going to cause some problems.